Hi folks, and welcome to the second Commodore 64 episode of my Nostalgia Trip Games. This time, in my personal gaming history chronology, we take the next step from having bored myself to death with the Cascade Cassette 50 and Daley Thompson's Olympic Challenge. And, well, a friend of mine sold me 50 of his used games on the C64, and these are the first 5 picks from those. Enjoy.
I have no recollection which was the first game I tried from the set of 50, but the game I have most likely played the most since then is Bruce Lee, which was featured in the Hit Squad compilation They Sold a Million #2. To be fair, I had already played Bruce Lee on the said friend's Atari 800 XL as well as my ZX Spectrum a few times before getting the C64 version. But if I remember correctly, this was the first game for the C64 that I had played before on other platforms. Although the C64 tape loading screen disappointed me by comparison to the Spectrum loader, the game itself was very much superior and felt just a bit nicer than the Atari version too. Bruce Lee is one of those very 80s styled flip-screen action-adventuring platformers that require you to collect items in order to open passages. But the fun and challenge comes in your given ability to dodge, punch, and jump kick your 2 recurring enemies, the green Yamo and the black Ninja. The ultimate goal is to find and electrocute the evil sorcerer, but you have 19 screens of traps to watch out and plenty of flashing items to collect before you can reach the sorcerer's lair. It's a fairly easy game, and even after you've beaten the game once or twice, the difficulty level doesn't rise enough to be impossible at any time. Good fun for a while, and a great game to revisit every once in a while. As fate would have it, Bruce Lee was the first comparison I ever wrote from a comparison blog many years ago, and you can read it by clicking on the link below in the video description, although I'll warn you, it's not nearly as comprehensive and well constructed as my latter comparisons. Another compilation that came in the set of 50 used games was Ocean's Live Ammo, which had a nice set of war-based action games in it. The first one I played from it was Green Beret, which I got so obsessed about one summer holiday that I took a couple of days to focus my gaming attentions entirely on it, and eventually beat the game. Obviously it took a while for me to ever play Green Beret again, and I never once completed it without cheats again. If you've never heard of Green Beret before, try Russian Attack if you're an NES gamer or if you're located in the United States. If that doesn't ring a bell either, I think the video speaks for itself. It's one of those stupidly hard run-and-gun type of games that make you get from one end of the level map to another and deal with a plethora of different enemies. The thing with Green Beret is that you are only armed with a knife to stab your enemies with, but you can pick up a flamethrower or a bazooka or whatever, depending on the level, and ammunition for it to kill all the enemies in line with yourself. The problem with Green Beret is not its high difficulty level, but rather its unpredictability. The enemies may act very differently from one run to the next, and the need for high accuracy and speed in your chosen controller is very pronounced. But even so, the game doesn't always register your knife stabs and other moves until it's a millisecond too late. The bonus difficulty in the C64 version is that the projectile weapons can only be fired by pressing the space bar, which is inconvenient. Regardless of all that, the C64 Green Beret is still a good nostalgia trip game for me, mostly because of its great soundtrack. Lucky Luke was one of my favorite comic book characters and series in my childhood, and to this day I'm a bit disappointed at the lack of proper Lucky Luke games on the C64 and other classic home computers and consoles. Outlaws was the first one that attempted to fill that void that I can remember, and it did the job surprisingly well. It was also the first C64 game from Ultimate Play the Game that I actually enjoyed, and to this day the only one at that. Outlaws is not an official Lucky Luke product, but rather an approximation of the concept. For the entire duration of the game, you perform your heroic, lonesome, cowboyish duties on horseback, and you can make the Jolly Jumper-like white horse run at 3 or 4 different speeds. The majority of the game is spent by shooting down villains that look very much like the Dalton brothers, who can appear in farmhouses, gallop on horses, or walk around the streets of any given town, shooting at random citizens and yourself. Of course, you have to watch out not to kill the citizens yourself. So it's a game with a nice difficulty curve, simplistic enough controls which are difficult to master, graphics with persona, and soundtrack fitting for a lonesome cowboying action game. I admit, it's not one of my most revisited nostalgia trip games, but it's one that I enjoy every time. When it comes to my comparison blog, here's a latter day feature, which is a nice contrast to my Bruce Lee comparison. Again, you can find the link to the comparison below. Ghostbusters is one of those games that remained a great mystery to me until fairly recently, because my second-hand bought original tape version didn't have the instruction leaflet included with it. Ghostbusters! I only read about some account numbers that could be input into the game to gain access to the best car and all the peripherals, but until I wrote the blog entry, I had never actually completed the game before. The key was, of course, in the keyboard, which I had no idea prior to that. So in the beginning of the game, you must set up a Ghostbusters franchise into your city, purchase a car of your choice, and equip it with lots of ghost-busting equipment. And then you need to drive around town, catch ghosts by either driving on them and vacuuming them, or enter a flashing sight and catch a ghost with the ghost trap device thing, whatever you call it. That's easy enough for a while, but as the city's PK energy rises, the ghosts get faster, and the Marshmallow Man, the Stay Puft Man, will eventually start appearing. And to be a successful Ghostbuster, you need to have made enough profit once the PK energy peaks at 10,000 to access the final sequence, and after you conquer that, you'll get a bonus for your account. For a game from 1984, it's a surprisingly inventive one. It's a nice cake with a bit of sloppy frosting, but the cherry on the top is definitely the intro screen with a karaoke version of Ray Parker Jr.'s Ghostbusters theme. Can't get much more nostalgia trip worthy than that. The last game for today is BMX Kidz from Firebird, which has a high score tune by a Finnish guy called Jori Olkkonen, also known as Jip in the scene. Back in the day, that was reason enough for me to load it up every now and then, even though I didn't really understand how to play the game properly, because it was the first original game that I owned that had a clear Finnish credit, and a good one at that. Happily, things are a bit different now, although I can't really say I've improved all that much in playing it. In essence, you could say that BMX Kidz is a BMX biking variant on the same concept as Excitebike on the NES. You just need to finish the stages as quickly as possible and play them in the given order, but in the case of BMX Kidz, you are also required to perform wheelies and stunts from the second stage onwards to qualify. Also, instead of the tendency to fall off your bike as in Excitebike, BMX Kidz gives you a constantly depleting energy bar, which can be filled up by picking up energy drink items, and then you have something called spokes, which you lose every time you either crash into one of your competitors or land a stunt jump badly. Picking up the tire items adds more spokes though, so you need to be concentrating on very different things here than in Excitebike. The greatest thing for me about BMX Kidz was hearing sampled instruments in SID music for the first time, and the main title theme by Paul Doherty still sounds awesome to me. If you're a collector, BMX Kidz currently has an advantage of being rather cheap in retro gaming stores, and I'd say it's a good addition to any collection. And needless to say, it's very nostalgic.